Om Sahanā-Vavatu Sahanā-Bhunaktu Saha Vīryam Karavā-vahai Tejas Vinā Vadhīta Mastu Ma Vidvishā-Vahai Om Shānti Shānti Shāntihi. Om Bliss of Liberation, Sivananda Saraswati. Jai to the Mother in all of her forms. Jai. Good morning. Okay, so we continue thought power. Still in physics. Physics and the philosophy of thought power. We just talked about, started thought waves and thought transference. And he made the point that this world is really nothing but the materialization of thought, of the thought forms. And we talked about that a little bit, and modern physics, and the same conclusion. Except that one difference is seeing the energy, but physics, quantum physics, does not make the connection between the energy and thought energy, interestingly. Interesting. So the scientific view still is that consciousness rises from matter, not the other way around. Okay. So Swami Sivananda, continuing from that, says, great yogins like Jnanadev, Bhartrihari, and Patanjali used to send and receive messages to and from distant persons through mind telepathy, mental radio, and thought transference. Telepathy was the first wireless telegraph and telephone service ever known to the world. Just as you take physical exercises, play games such as tennis and cricket in order to maintain physical health, you will have to maintain mental health by radiating the right thought waves, by taking sattvic food, mental recreation of an innocent and harmless nature, change of mood, relaxation of mind by entertaining good, ennobling, and sublime thoughts, and by cultivating the habit of cheerfulness, santosha. So mental exercise. I remember as a child, oh my goodness, what was his name? There was the great Kreskin. Is that name ring? Okay, the great Kreskin. So Kreskin worked with, he wasn't a magician in the sense of magicians. He worked with thought power and telekinesis and like this. And so, and in his own way, he demonstrated, and he was quite well known at the time. So this would have been 55, 60 years ago, something like that. And he was on television a lot, and he could bend the tines of forks with thought. At least that's the idea of it. And of course, people would say, well, he wasn't really doing that, but also reading cards in advance and reading people's thoughts and like this. And so I practiced with it and had some rudimentary discoveries at that time about telekinesis and reading of thoughts. And yes, it's possible, and yes, it can be developed. In fact, interestingly enough, we've lost it as a society. Even though we have it in a way, we've lost the discernment about it. Because we're surrounded in the thoughts, we're sharing thoughts all the time, and we commonly have experiences where you think someone and then someone else says it, right? In kirtan, we have it all the time because someone opens the page to a kirtan and says to themselves, I'm going to chant this. And then someone else does it and someone will say, that was mine. It's more well developed or less well covered in cats and dogs. For someone who has a cat or dog at home, you see it, because the dogs in particular in this way, the dog will recognize people that are coming to the door without seeing them, right? And it will whine or bark or whatever, whine in anticipation or bark, depending upon the thought nature of the person that's coming. And so that power is innate. And it's also so that in prior yugas, it is said that we commonly communicated by thought transference instead of spoken voice. Okay. So, mental exercise, understanding this, mental exercise, understanding that we each, as quote-unquote individuals, are each affecting the collective in this way. I remember Gopala hearing thought power as karma yoga, and it's an active practice for him to this day. He roots in thought power as karma yoga. So, and yes, we can hear that. We should hear that. If one wants to serve, the first way of serving has to be to bring down beneficial thoughts. Okay. Marvels of thought vibrations. Every thought you send out is a vibration which never perishes. It goes on vibrating every particle of the universe. And if your thoughts are noble, holy, and forcible, they set in vibration every sympathetic mind. Unconsciously, all people who are like you take the thought you have projected, and in accordance with the capacity that they have, they send out similar thoughts. The result is that without your knowledge of the consequences of your own work, you'll be setting in motion great forces which will work together and put down the lowly and mean thoughts generated by the selfish and the wicked. So thought is being transferred in a way like repeating towers. There used to be telegraph repeating towers. And today, for cell phone coverage, wireless coverage, we have these towers everywhere. And so the cell coverage is expanded and strengthened through the towers. And the towers are transceivers. They receive and they transmit. Whatever they receive, they also transmit. And what's being shared is the role of the individual in this thought network, as it is the same. Whatever you receive here within your own mental capacity and ruminate upon or entertain or harbor, you're also transmitting. So in radio, we call that a transceiver, transmitter and a receiver, both. And so this is in age like this where fear and anger and such are so predominant. This is what's happening, is that these thoughts are being received, ruminated upon, amplified in the inner mental factory, and then in the greater mental substratum, they become more and more predominant. So understanding this, cultivate good, beneficial, wholesome, kind, compassionate thought. Understanding this. Diversity of thought vibrations. Every person has his own mental world, his own mode of thinking, his own ways of understanding things, and his own way of acting. Just as the face and voice of every person differ from those of another, the mode of thinking and understanding also differs. And this is the reason why misunderstandings easily occur between friends or within society, etc. Each one relates to a word differently, a lot differently or a little differently. A statement, a sentence. The mind itself functions the same way. The mental faculty has the same capacities, but the nature different, a little or a lot.
the different gunas.
Different mixture.
Of goodness.
Yeah. You take the three and you put them in a stew, and everyone will get a little bit different of each, and that is the nature. One is not able to understand rightly the views of another, and this is a key point in us in society. If we wish to be able to get along with others, communicate with others, love others, inspire, serve, then this is needing to be understood. One is not able to understand rightly the views of another. It's never possible. And of course, we turn it around and we'll say, well, you don't understand me, and that will always be correct. So don't get worked up about it.
Right.
It's fine. So what? Better to understand yourself.
I would say half the time I don't even do that.
Better to understand yourself. Better to uplift yourself when you understand yourself a bit. Oh. One should be in tune with the mental vibrations or thought vibrations of another. Then only can one easily understand another. So it's possible to get closer, but you have to develop deep listening, deep tuning.
Shraddha.
Shraddha is faith.
No, the other one.
Shravana. The capacity to actually hold space and listen has to be developed. Lustful thoughts, thoughts of hatred, jealousy, and selfishness produce distorted images in the mind, in our minds, and cause clouding of understanding, perversion of intellect, loss of memory, and confusion in the mind. And everyone suffers from these tendencies to a greater or lesser extent until we've really gotten very far along in surrender in offering the instrument. And as a result, purification. When we say impure, that's where the impurity is starting. Conservation of thought energy. Conservation of thought energy. In physics, you have the term power of orientation. Though the mass of energy is there, the current will not flow. It must be connected. So that electricity socket over there has potential to flow, but it's not flowing. And so something has to be connected to it in order for it to flow. That's what's being shared. Even so, the mental energy, which is dissipated and misdirected in various worthless worldly thoughts, should be well directed in proper spiritual channels. Do not store in your brain useless information. Learn to unmind the mind. And that's one of the first techniques. And later we get into the techniques, but this is one of the most significant for us, which is one of our dear brothers, Gopinath. He might be with us this morning, or he might catch this. He joins us. We were having a conversation a year or so ago, and what he shared was this, which is so common. He thought that every thought that came to him was of merit and required mental exploration. Mm-hmm. And if you look at us, our situation is similar to some extent. It's like a thought comes to us and it seems like that's who we are in that moment, and that somehow it's worthy. We feel anger arise, for example. And the only reason that it continues to arise is because of the inner sympathetic treatment that it's given. But it's just a vritti. It's just a vritti. It's nothing unless you give it power. And it doesn't need to overwhelm you. And you can seek reasons for it. And of course, if you do, you'll find them. But you're better off just letting it be. Unmind it. That's that concept. Just let it be. Let it be. The thoughts the thoughts and feelings and so on that don't go anywhere beneficial, he's saying just learn to unmind it. Learn not to repeat it. Learn not to cogitate upon it. Learn not to entertain it. Because it's not of merit. Only cogitate, only meditate on that which is of merit. And those would only be compassionate, kind, accepting, non-judgmental, uplifting, right? Understanding the way that it goes, because whatever you're cogitating upon, whatever you're meditating on, then that will grasp you. And so when you're thinking about how wrong some person is with their idea or their action or whatever, then you're in the stew in those times, and it has no benefit whatsoever. And so learn to unmind the mind is the...
Swamiji,
Oh,
it's just so beautiful, this sweet, sweet gift of the ability to choose.
that's where free will is. People think that free will has to do with something outside. I get to choose what happens to me. Or I get to choose even my own living situation. And you do, if you understood what that means. This is where you live. So if you understand that it means this is your living situation, then you do get to choose it. But this will be predisposed because of the nature to a certain environment. But it's possible to change it. Okay. Now, he steps into something very interesting, the cell theory and the thoughts. So now he talks about cells. A cell is a mass of protoplasm with a nucleus. It is endowed with intelligence. So blood cells and such. He says some cells secrete while some cells excrete. The cells of the testes, for example, secrete semen. The cells of the kidneys excrete urine. Some cells act the part of a soldier. They defend the body from the inroads or attacks of foreign poison, matter, and germs. So the white blood cells, for example. They digest and throw them out. Some cells carry food materials to the tissues and organs. The cells perform their work without your conscious volition. Their activities are controlled by the sympathetic nervous system, and they're in direct communion with the mind in the brain. When someone leaves the body, they leave this function of the mind as well. Because this function, the control of the cells within the body, is specific to the body, to the physical body. And of course, it's governed by a supervisor. But then he makes the point, by a deity. Every impulse of the mind, every thought is conveyed to the cells. They're greatly influenced by the varying conditions or states of mind. If there are confusion, depression, and other negative emotions and thoughts in the mind, they're telegraphically transmitted through the nerves to every cell in the body. The soldier cells become panic-stricken. So for someone who's constantly cogitating, meditating upon cancer or COVID or any of this, then does it make sense that the nervous system comes on edge. We feel it even, right? We feel it. And so the nervous system is guiding, directing through this intelligence the function of the cells. So the cells themselves become off balance. And then,
and if you follow that through a little bit, the cells themselves kind of vibrate that particular disease.
And they're weakened. They're not able to perform their function properly, and they become inefficient. Some people are extremely body conscious and possess no idea of the self, capital S self. They live irregular, indisciplined lives and fill their stomachs with sweets, pastries, and so on. There's no rest for the digestive and the eliminating organs. They suffer from physical weakness and diseases. The atoms, molecules, and cells in the bodies produce discordant or inharmonious vibrations. They have no hope, confidence, faith, serenity, and cheerfulness. They are unhappy. The people are unhappy. The life force, but also the life force is not operating properly. Their vitality is at a low ebb. Their mind is filled with fear, despair, worry, and anxiety. So the connection between mental state and the physical state is being explored here. And the interlinkage. Make sense? So we know that someone who is constantly thinking about a thing that might happen to them is setting up an environment where it's likely to happen. But here he's talking some about the physics of how it is that happens.
And yet scientists still can't make that leap.
No, some do. There's a lot of work now within medicine, modern medicine, and you work in the field, but there's actually investment in happiness studies and contentment and the power of contentment upon the defense mechanisms within the body, etc. You must see some of that.
Yeah,
There's some expenditure now being made
about laughing in cancer.
There you go. So there is some. It doesn't seem to be well understood from this perspective, but
in physics, there's the light particle, or it's a wave particle. If you measure it as a wave, it becomes a wave. If you measure it as a particle, it becomes a particle. So like your intent of how you're measuring it actually changes whether it functions as a wave or a particle.
Like the double slit.
Yeah, the double slit.
Okay. Primal thought in modern science. Thought is the greatest force on earth. Thought is the most powerful weapon in the armor of a yogi. Constructive thought transforms, renews, and builds. The far-reaching possibilities of this force were most accurately developed to perfection by the ancients and put to the highest possible use. For thought is the primal force at the origin and behind, underlying, all of creation. The genesis of the entire phenomenal creation is given as a single thought that arose in the cosmic mind. This is the Om thought.
Well, that's before the single.
Yeah, I mean, Swami Premananda would say it like this. He said, the absolute, one without a second, had a thought. And then he says, how did he have a thought? And then he does this. And the thought was like this: let me see myself as many. And so, but from the yogi perspective, from the sages and saints, really all of the sages and saints, then the arising is seen as thought. that first arising, that first creation is seen as thought. That's why in Genesis, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's why. So in the Abrahamic or Eastern traditions, every one of and Plato and all of the great philosophers, etc., they're pointing to the same, that it started with thought. So the world is the primal idea made manifest. This first thought became manifest as a vibration issuing from the eternal stillness of the divine essence. This is the reference in classic terminology to the Icha, the desire of Hiranyagarbha, cosmic soul, that originates as a spandana or vibration. And now you make the connection with modern physics. He says this vibration is nothing like the rapid oscillation to and fro of physical particles, but is something infinitely subtle, so subtle as to be even inconceivable to the normal mind. But this has made it clear that all forces are ultimately resolvable into a state of pure vibration, which is what modern science has seen. All forces are resolvable. If you go back and look at their origin, then you see it is vibration. And if you go back and look at the origin of the vibrations, you see a pure vibration before the impurities, before the... So, it says modern science also has newly arrived at the conclusion after its prolonged researches in external physical nature. That's what the yogis share. Okay.
Swami, how come there's sometimes like this is sort of like a two-part question, or like a lag time, like a long lag time. Like you can think about a thought intensely, and then it like comes into like physical manifestation, and sometimes it's like faster than others. And like for example, why can't I just like imagine that I want to turn that statue into something else, and then it like turns into something else? Like if I sat there and I thought about it all day long, like it's gonna put the energy in my body. I'm gonna go there and like put a hat on it or whatever I'm gonna do, right? Like if I imagine that it had a hat on Swami Sivananda, like eventually, it might create a hat on that statue. How come it doesn't happen just like
in a simple way? In your own inner world, it becomes that immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. Eyes closed, it becomes that immediately.
Right, like I can just close my eyes and see a hat.
Yeah. So.
How come it doesn't happen in this?
Well, but it happened. It happened. In your world, it happened. But the outer is the collective thought nature.
Okay.
It's the collective. So the stronger you tune into this force, this collective force, and cogitate upon a thing, then the more it's like a vortex, as it were. Then the stronger the vortex becomes, until finally, within the collective thought. So Brahma Kumaris, there's a beautiful statement related to the world, the outer world, saying that the outer world is the collective thought nature of all of the inner worlds. So just a way of relating to. So when that becomes the collective, or predominant in the collective, or in a particular region of the collective, as it were. That's why, and he spoke to this yesterday, I think it was, that the stronger is the cogitation, the stronger is the will related to the thought, the stronger it is, the sooner it fructifies, the sooner it becomes material. Within the body, without the body. There's not a difference really within the body or without the body. You said two-part question. Were those both parts?
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, as soon as it's cogitated upon, though, it has power. It's in the collective. There's only the collective. So as soon as it's cogitated upon, it has power and it has influence. And if you continue, then it has more and more influence. So make sure that it's a beneficial one. Oh. Okay. Radium. Radium is a rare commodity. Yogins who have controlled their thoughts are also very rare in this world, like radium. Just as sweet perfume continuously emanates from an incense stick, so also divine perfume and divine effulgence, magnetic Brahmic aura, radiate from a yogi who has controlled his thoughts and who is constantly dwelling in Brahman, or the infinite. The effulgence and perfume of his face is Brahma Varchas. When you hold in your hand a bouquet made of jasmine, rose, and champaka flowers, the sweet perfume pervades the whole hall and tickles all alike. Even so, the perfume or fame and reputation, yasas and kirti, of a yogi who has controlled his thoughts spreads far and wide. He becomes a cosmic force. I'll share something. This is absolutely so, and you may or may not recognize it. We're just we're talking about thought, only thought. But thought shapes the countenance. Thought shapes your countenance. It determines how you hold yourself, how you act, and it permeates all of the pores of this physical body. The fact that the dogs can know that you're coming has to do with your thoughts and their ability to perceive the thoughts. And so there is a coarseness within most of us because the thoughts are quite mixed and we're still entertaining many self-centered, judgmental types of thoughts. And so there's a coarseness and a roughness to us. But when those thoughts are tamed and overcome, and the inner thought environment no longer has anything to do with judgment or seeing people as other or trying to size everyone up based upon what they say or what they do, when the inner world has become a well-wishing environment, wishing well towards all, seeing each as the divine, when this is the inner world, then the pores, the countenance, everything is changed. I remember just on pilgrimage, what was I working on pilgrimage? Only ever thoughts. Right? I stepped forward. What did I want? I want to know you, to serve you. And so constantly asking how to serve inside and then doing the best to employ. But how do you employ anything? You have to start in the thoughts, correct? Yeah. If you're to think well of people, how do you do it? You have to work on your thoughts. You have to root out everything that's contrary and cultivate whatever's in alignment with that. So I remember going to see Swami Jyotirmayananda, and Swami Jyotirmayananda is a very well-tuned radio station. Very well-tuned radio station. He will see you so clearly, like that. And so I came to him after the pilgrimage, and he smiled and he said, the divine perfume. And he's talking about the thought nature that had been cultivated. So don't think that your thoughts don't make a difference. The thoughts make all of the difference because of this thought power and the physics of. Thought, its weight, size, and shape. Last one. Every thought has got weight, shape, size, form, color, quality, and power. A yogi can see all these thoughts directly with his inner yogic eye. Thoughts are like things. Just as you hand over an orange to your friend and take it back, so also you can give a useful, powerful thought to your friend and also take it back. Thought is a great force. It moves, it creates. You can work wonders with the power of thought. You must know the right technique of handling and manipulating a thought. And then he goes on to its thought, its form, its name, and color. So I don't know if you've met people, often people who can read auras, for example, who have different powers related to seeing thoughts, they often won't talk about it because they'll get ostracized for it. But we've come to meet, because of the purity of thought here, we've come to meet many people who volunteer, who when we talk about thoughts, who talk about their ability to relate to thoughts. Some will see thoughts as color auras, different colors, and we'll pick that up in the morning. Some will see them according to more black and white, not color, but darker, lighter. Generally speaking, they'll see those who are able to see it. Again, it's with inner eye. Those who are able to see it will see it in the vicinity of the person. And this is work that was done in Soviet Union for many, many years. Karelian photography and all of this, looking at the astral bodies, trying to find ways to see the astral body. But this aura is the thought nature. They're actually the thoughts. Sometimes we met people who feel them as weight, heavier or lighter as well. So, okay, we'll pick that back up. Any other comments or questions? Where we are?
I remember with the aura camera, I remember they were doing a study where they put two females together and the color didn't change, two males together, the color didn't change, and then male and a female and the color changes. The aura changes color.
Yeah. That, again, has to do with the thoughts and the reactive thought nature and such. So. Okay. Let's close. Find chairs in our people. Om Trayambakam Yajame Surandhi Pushti Vardhanam Orai Rukmila Vandanan Mrityur Mukshya Mamritat Om Trayambakam Yajame Surandhi Pushti Vardhanam Orai Rukmila Vandanan Mrityur Mukshya Mamritat Om Trayambakam Yajame Surandhi Pushti Vardhanam Orai Rukmila Vandanan Mrityur Mukshya Mamritat Om Sarvesham Sastir-Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir-Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makashi Dukhabhalat Bhave Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityur Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Mudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shānti Shānti Shāntihi. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchitananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Sadguru Sivananda Saraswati.
Jai.
For all the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Jai.
That's right. It's for RT, page 210.